PTF back with you on the In the Money Media YouTube channel the week after Derby. Very happy to be joined once again by Randy Moss of NBC Sports. Randy, everything good?
Do I look sleepy? I'm still catching up on my rest, Pete. It's a stressful week, but hey, I hope I never have to get a real job.
Well, you guys did a great job. It was terrific watching the coverage, and the coverage actually is going to come up here in this conversation we're going to have. This is one I can see the snarky comments now. Don't they have this conversation every year? And we do, but the reason we do is because it is very, very important. And we're going to talk about the current structure of the Triple Crown and the possibility of changing it, perhaps the necessity of changing it. Randy, we'll give the first word to you to sort of lay out the thesis when it comes to the current construction of the Triple Crown Series.
Well, I've been sort of the flag bearer for this topic now for a long time. I mean, I actually Googled myself yesterday just to see. I wonder when I first started writing about this. 2008 was on ESPN.com is when I wrote my first article about it, and I've been beating the drum now for 17 years. I mean, horse racing is stuck in a mindset of the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, and they don't want to, change. As we know, everybody that follows horse racing as much as we do knows that change in horse racing comes at a glacial pace. Even when all of the parameters indicate that change needs to happen. And that's where we are with the Triple Crown. For a long time now, it's been very evident that horsemen do not like, and that's an understatement. Horsemen loathe running their horses back in 2 weeks. Now, there are a couple of exceptions. Bob Baffert is gung-ho about the Derby Preakness as it is. Wayne Lucas is probably the same way. But other than those two guys, I mean, almost all of the trainers you talk to, including Todd Pletcher now, are of a belief that the 2 week gap between the Derby and the Preakness is an anachronism. So we've seen this coming. We've seen runners up and third place finishers and fourth place finishers in the Kentucky Derby routinely now skip the Preakness and wait for the Belmont. Now we're seeing Kentucky Derby winners skip the Preakness and wait for the Belmont. I mean, it's overdue for a tweaking. Maybe this will be finally the impetus for it. I don't know.
The big thing that's changed to me, and I'm an interesting guy to talk to on this because I've gone from here to there and back again. Around that same time, you were writing on ESPN.com. I wrote an editorial in the New York Times about changing the series. I had subsequently been a little bit disabused by that by our mutual friend, Stephen Christ. And the argument that appealed to me was, hey, this is something in racing that works. We have these 3 big days. A lot of money gets bet in a game where we have so many other things to worry about. Why are you worried about this? And that persuaded me for a while. The thing that's changed for me in the last 5 years, we've now seen 2 out of 4 healthy Derby winners pass the Preakness, and then a third that ran in the Preakness, Mage. I think if Ramiro Restrepo and the ownership group had that decision to make over again, not sure they would have made the same decision. It just seems like we've really reached a critical mass here, a turning point where when even the winner isn't going, don't you have to throw up your hands a little bit and say, what are we even doing here?
Well, that's the giant flashing red light, right? But then you look at all the other things underneath that. In the 1960s through the end of the 1990s, second place finishers in the Kentucky Derby were 84% likely to come back and run in the Preakness, right? And some of the ones that didn't were injured. Third place finishers were 70% likely to also come back in the Preakness. Now you fast forward to the 2000s through 2019, okay? That 84% rate for the runners-up dropped to 50%. Now, so far in the 2020s, excluding the COVID year of 2020, that rate has now gone to 20% of the runner-ups, and it may even go down more than that if journalism doesn't run in the Preakness. And so far in the 2020s, no third place finishers at all in the Kentucky Derby have gone on to run in the Preakness. What this is doing, it's making the Preakness a weaker race. The people that say you can't change the Kentucky Derby, Preakness, Belmont spacing because of tradition. Pete, the oldest tradition in horse racing as it pertains to the Triple Crown is the best 3-year-olds run in all 3 races. That's what makes the Triple Crown what it is. If you're getting to the point now where trainers are loath to run in the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness, you've got a big problem. A big problem. This is the marquee event in horse racing, the Triple Crown and the Breeders' Cup. But for most people that don't follow racing as religiously as we do, it's the Triple Crown, right?
Absolutely.
And it may not be dying, Pete, but it's in intensive care, and it needs medical attention, and something needs to be done to fix it. And the solution is right there, easily accomplished, if people would just put the best interest of the sport ahead of their own particular self-interests.
Well, that's a theme that comes up again and again when you're analyzing horse racing, putting the good of the big picture, growing the pie as opposed to fighting for one's own piece of the diminishing pie is a big problem we face in a lot of areas.
Let me make one more point here about this whole topic, okay? And we could do a whole separate hour-long podcast on this. But today's racehorses, because of nutrition, because of veterinary care, because of selective breeding over the decades, are bigger, they're stronger, they're faster than they've ever been before. Now, that may not apply to 1.25 miles and 1.5 miles as the distances get longer, because most racehorses nowadays, as we know, are being bred to excel as milers. And if they can get 1.25 miles, then that's fantastic. But what this is, and very little attention has been paid to soundness and durability. Okay, you've got the same undercarriage that now has much more stress on it, and as a result, horse safety has come to the forefront, and the level of veterinary attention for these horses before they run is now escalated dramatically, and rightfully so. Horses are not as robust as they used to be. All trainers will tell you this. If you get them off to the side, even if they train for breeders, they may not say it on the record, but they'll say it off the record. Okay. Horsemen know that running back in 2 weeks is not good for their horses. That's why they don't do it. Horsemen would love to win the Preakness Stakes. For crying out loud, it's the second leg of the Triple Crown. It's one of the most historic races we have. Why would they not run in the Preakness Stakes? Because they don't think it's good for the animal. And now we're here in an era where horse safety is of utmost priority. And that's another major factor in why this needs to be changed.
One thing that I hear from people on the opposite side of this argument that makes me actively agitato is the idea, we like 3 races in 5 weeks. We don't want it to be easier to win the Triple Crown. I'll let you take that one.
What makes it easier to sweep the Triple Crown if the Preakness becomes tougher?
Right.
It's a nonsensical argument. I mean, yes, horses would benefit from extra time between races. But if the Preakness becomes 50% tougher than it is right now, then that would offset any sort of advantage that the horses might have today that they didn't have back then. But, do we really want to keep a scenario that's not good for the horses in order to satisfy that sort of argument? No.
Randy, you're a journalist, you're a horse player, you're also a storyteller, the work that you do broadcasting on NBC. And it impressed the heck out of me year in, year out when I see how the betting public connects to these narratives. And this year's win pool might be the best example ever. No coincidence that Render Judgment is the underlay he is in the race. People saw the Netflix show and saw his trainer and root for him, and they want to back him with their dollars. Griffin Johnson, who maybe if we have a minute, we'll touch on later, to me, did a heroic job promoting this sport, bringing in all these new people. They bet, and they bet on Sandman, also an underlay. You can go up and down the field and find other examples of this, but what it tells me is the general public, the viewing public, is interested in these stories. The way the Crown is constructed now, they're going to come back in 2 weeks, and none of those stories continue. With what you're proposing, and we'll get to the actual solution laid out by the time we get to the end of this video, you'd have a chance for people to come back and follow these stories. Getting back to Netflix for a second, I feel like there's been an immediate positive effect on the sport from the Netflix show. I think everyone in the game has gotten phone calls about the Netflix show. And if Netflix was producing the Triple Crown, just theoretically, what are the chances they'd run 3 races in 5 weeks like this, year in, year out?
No. There's zero chance if the Kentucky Derby winners and the runners-up and the third-place finishers aren't even going to be around in 2 weeks in the Preakness. You're right.
And I just feel like that's when you get back to that question of what are we doing here? We're trying to have the best horses compete in all 3 races and be able to show the general public those storylines. I just think that's more valuable than anything gained. I mean, it's a risk. You move these dates, it's a risk, but it's a risk worth taking because it's not like the sport is at all-time peak health. This is an opportunity, I think, to take this one toehold we have with the general public and start climbing.
I couldn't have said it better. You are exactly right about that, Pete. And let's hope that, I mean, you hate to see a Derby winner not running in the Preakness result in something positive or be a positive. And it's not a positive, but maybe it will have a positive impact.
Before I let you get out of here, we do have to lay out the solution that you have in mind.
Well, there's only one solution, and that is to space the races out, and that falls squarely into the lap of the New York Racing Association. The Maryland Jockey Club has wanted to move the Preakness for quite a while now. The handwriting's been on the wall for so long that, like I said, I mean, it's the Preakness, the Triple Crown isn't dying, but it's sick, and something needs to be done. And the people of Pimlico know this. And they went to NYRA after Rich Strike passed the Preakness Stakes voluntarily because they thought 2 weeks was too short. And NYRA at that point said, no, we're not going to move the Belmont Stakes. And the reason is simple. Right now, the biggest beneficiary of these 3 races in 5-week timetable is the Belmont. It's NYRA. You get all these horses that skip the Preakness to wait for the Belmont. And so the Belmont has a larger, deeper field as it currently stands. And think about this. If the Preakness is a weaker race, and obviously it is when all these horses skip the Preakness, then that makes it more likely that a Kentucky Derby winner, if they run in the Preakness, is going to win the Preakness. Makes it more likely for a horse to come to the Belmont Stakes with a chance to sweep the Triple Crown, which of course results in a financial bonanza for Belmont Park and the New York Racing Association. But what has to happen is NYRA has to put the best interests of the Triple Crown, the best interest of the sport of horse racing, ahead of its own self-interests, right? They're acting like they think what's good for NYRA is automatically good for the sport, and what's automatically good for the Triple Crown. And yes, New York Racing is a huge part of the health of the sport. But they've got to think of the greater good and not just what helps the Belmont Stakes. And
so we're talking,
and the Belmont is the Belmont. The Belmont is always going to be good. It's the test of the champion. Yeah, you got to have confidence in that. You've got a top class historic race. It's always going to be good.
Sorry. So the ideal schedule to you: first Saturday in May, first Saturday in June, first Saturday in July. Is that what you're thinking?
Whatever it takes to work. And 3 weeks is not going to be enough. Horsemen don't want to run back in 3 weeks. It just goes to show you, what a bad situation we're in right now. Even if you move it to 3 weeks, it's not going to help. So that would be one possible option. Hey, if the Triple Crown is so important to the sport, Pete, if it takes 5 weeks between each race, what the hell? Move it to 5 weeks. Make the Triple Crown what it deserves to be with the best horses running in all 3 races. And the business is going to be great for the Preakness, and the business is going to be great for the Belmont.
Last question. When realistically could this happen? We have a couple of years of upheaval here. We're going to have the Preakness run at Laurel the next 2 years after this year. Obviously, we're still figuring out what's going on with the construction at Belmont Park. Soonest that would be, obviously, this year's at Saratoga. I guess it could be at Belmont next year. Wouldn't surprise me if that kicks the can a year down the line. When would you advocate for these changes to take place? Is it an ASAP, or would you want to wait for everybody to have their ducks in a row here?
What I've been told, Pete, is that the New York Racing Association has now, or about a year ago, told the Maryland Jockey Club, and this is secondhand, that they are now amenable to considering a change in the schedule, but let's wait until after we get past Belmont at Saratoga. And when we get to Belmont Park, then we would be willing to revisit it. Let's hope that that is accurate.
Great stuff, Randy, as ever. Oh, real quick before we get out of here. You mentioned this kerfuffle on social media regarding Griffin Johnson. I just wanted to get your very quick thought on this, so neither of us feel tempted to wade into the dirty waters of social media.
Yeah, I had a chance to hang out a little bit with Griffin Johnson. We had him on another podcast that I do, and I talked to him at Kentucky Derby. What an outstanding young man. What a great job he did promoting the sport of horse racing in the lead up to the Kentucky Derby and then Kentucky Derby week. He's well-spoken. He's passionate about the sport. He's dedicated to bringing more young people into the sport. And yet, from what I've been told, he's getting some criticism on X because he's not focusing enough on gambling. Hey, well, for crying out loud, in order to get these people to become,
you got to start somewhere.
You've got to get them interested to begin with. Then it grows organically, right? My daughter's 22 years old. She's as most 22-year-olds, she's very enthusiastic about Instagram and TikTok. She's done a little influencing of her own, and she has told me that the Kentucky Derby has never been more visible on social media than it has been the last few years. That some social media influencers are beginning to call the Kentucky Derby the new Coachella. And that major corporations, clothing lines, and other corporations that have a strong presence on social media have been sending influencers to the Kentucky Derby, paying their way the last couple of years so that they can post from the Derby. And this sudden explosion in TV ratings for the Kentucky Derby on NBC, I think might have something to do with that. The producers at NBC, it's not me and Jerry Bailey. The producers at NBC have been, as you know, have been focusing a lot more on the lifestyle elements of the Derby than they ever had in the past. And yeah, the traditionalists in horse racing hate that. Don't show. Why are you spending so much time on the dresses and the hats and the mint juleps and all that? You need to focus on the third dam and the second dam and the come on. It has
for all of it, people.
It has an impact. Clearly, you can look at the ratings, and I think my daughter might be onto something. It might have a lot to do with the social media presence that's increasing.
Great stuff, Randy. Props to you. Props to ABR and Griffin and that whole team for the work they're doing over there. We'll catch up with you next week in Baltimore, I hope.
All right, Pete. Looms boldly.